Why quit giving advice altogether? And the reasons you ought to think about it as well. Have you ever found yourself in the tricky position of giving advice, only to have it come back to haunt you? I sure have. It's a tightrope walk between wanting to help and risking the fallout if things don't turn out as expected. Here is why I decided to stop offering free advice altogether. There is a whole psychology behind advice giving and receiving. You see, people love autonomy. The average person normally wants to feel in control of their own lives and decisions. When they succeed in doing so, they want to claim that success as their own. It makes sense, right? Yet, when third-party advice is involved, it complicates things to a certain degree. Did they succeed because of their own merits, or because they followed your guidance? This ambiguity can minimize the role of your contribution to their success. Then there is the notion around accountability and blame. Conversely, when things go downward, it's in human nature to look for a scapegoat. If someone has followed your advice and failed, you're an easy target. It's a psychological defense mechanism to deflect blame from oneself, and unfortunately, the advisor often bears the brunt. I have seen it firsthand a few times. I am asked for advice, and it works out, but then the narrative changes. The advice becomes a footnote in the recipient's story of self-made accomplishments. Sometimes, it can be disheartening to not be acknowledged for your part in someone's achievements, can't it? Especially if you have put in the work to help or if you have sacrificed your time and energy to have the person's back. And then there is the opposite scenario. When advice backfires. You see, when the outcome is not favorable, suddenly, the failure is not due to their own decisions or external factors, but squarely because of your advice. This can strain or challenge relationships. It is no secret. The perils of an advisor. Growing up, and for reasons that may relate to my formal education but also character traits, I found that advising others is like dancing on a tightrope. One misstep, and you risk falling into the chasm of blame or becoming an invisible factor in their success. My decision to abandon the advice-giving game has thus been conscious, well-informed, and mature. People cherish autonomy. When they triumph, they want all the credit for their accomplishments. Offering advice complicates this dynamic, creating a fog around who truly deserves the accolades. Personal victories fueled by advice often morph into solo narratives, leaving voluntary advisors in the shadows. The collaborative effort becomes a forgotten footnote. In the blame game, though, advisors often end up being the ones when things go awry. It's human nature to deflect blame, and advice givers find themselves caught in the crossfire of failure. Here is some practical advice if you are a spontaneous advisor or if people ask your opinion all too often. Employ the art of silence. Choosing when to speak and when not to is an art that takes time and lots of human understanding to develop. Shy away from the impulse to instruct or direct others. Read the room. Not all occasions are the same when it comes to sharing your knowledge, expertise, or sheer experience. Read the room means to investigate and filter the conditions surrounding the persons asking for your attention and piece of advice. Are they the sole decision makers? Maybe they are not alone in deciding, which means you risk being accused of foul play or misinterpreted. Hold your horses. Your odds of gaining something are close to zero. What do you want? Personal recognition or attribution? Be put on a pedestal of wisdom? It does not work that way. It leads to a lose-lose kind of outcome. Knowing when to offer advice is an art. It's about sensing the individual's readiness, and gauging whether your bits of wisdom will be embraced or rejected. 4. Listen instead of speaking. Now this is powerful. Waiting in silence often speaks louder than words. Actively listening, rather than bombarding with advice, can create a more profound impact, if you want it to. 5. Guide with questions. Be inventive, if you really mean to help. Ask the right questions. Ideate, even improvise, but get to ask the questions that will help the person help himself or herself. Answers that come from within ourselves are often the best ones. Plus, they do not cause debate as to who gets the credit. 6.
Offer resources and support, not easy answers or solutions.
Providing resources allows individuals to navigate their challenges independently, with a sense of ownership over their decisions.
It even strengthens the relationship between you and them. In a world where advice is a double-edged sword that can be labeled opinionated or biased, do the smart thing. Be very selective on if, when, and to whom you are going to give a piece of your brain called advice. Thank you for watching. This video was brought to you by the Data-Driven Storyteller.